O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters of Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness on us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. The milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay. Good morning. So, we're still discussing, or we're back again, discussing action, motive for action, freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from what?
Bondage.
Bondage. There we go. Okay. And so the discussion yesterday, Lord Krishna is really putting the light on this concept of doing because something is to be done without expectation of something coming back to us. And he's putting the light on it. It's consistent, right? Several slokas on the same topic, yes? Several. So why?
It's important to know and to remember.
Sorry?
We forget.
Because we forget. It's as if we don't even know. There is something within us that's urging us this way, but we've allowed it to get very deeply covered up. And especially in modern society, and especially in the West, it's so foreign, this concept that I would do anything without getting something for it.
Yeah, it's
right?
commonplace for the opposite to be the case, culturally, for the conversation to live there.
Yeah. And even when we look, even most subtly, we can have the idea of serving, and often we'll have this conversation in this modern age about, I feel like I need to take care of myself because I've been taking care of so many others, and what? And I'm not getting what I need from it. That will be the feeling, and it'll get expressed too, right? Because why? Well, because I've been doing for my child, it'll always be mine. Invariably my friend, my child, my daughter, my mother, my father, which is what?
Illusion. Which
is illusion, but also bondage.
Yes. Ignorance.
And there will be an and they're ungrateful, or
condition.
Right? So that's, you see how deeply ingrained it is. And we would have these conversations day after day after day after day about why does the Buddha do what the Buddha does? And it would be so deeply ingrained, Gopala, that because he's getting something. Right? He did that so that he could be free. It's an interesting, No, it's very interesting. That motivation will help for a while, but here the Lord is saying, no, do because it's to be done. And then he gives the example, right, of himself. And he says, I do. And we had this discussion yesterday, and again, hard to relate with this Western psyche, but how is it that the Lord is doing? Well, everything that's done here. everything that's done here. So the sun, warming, heating. Does the sun do anything? You see, it's so consistent that you don't even think it does anything.
It's active.
It's not doing anything, it's just being. No, it's definitely doing.
And it's inactivity.
You feel warm this morning? So it's engaged in action, isn't it, the sun? There's a wall here. You know, the only reason that there's a wall here is because the atoms are involved in action. Because if the atoms stopped acting, then what would happen to the wall?
Dissolution.
It would disintegrate. The only thing holding the wall appears to be stable, doesn't it? It appears to be unmoving, fixed, set in stone. But the only thing holding it up as a wall is action.
And it's mostly space.
But it's those atoms acting
Right.
that provides the illusion of this wall. And so even the firmament here, there's a real firmament, which we're not seeing, but even that which we take to be solid, like the ground, until it quakes, it only appears that way because it's acting, because it's in constant movement. If it stops moving, the hologram collapses.
Yes.
If it stops moving, that little bit of matter collapses in on itself. It's only the motion, if you look atomically, it's only the motion that's holding this up. I remember when I was starting to, coming back to science, because the world didn't make any sense, right? Thank God. And coming back to science and going back into those science texts and like that the example was used, the Empire State Building. How much matter is there in the Empire State Building? There's only, if you take all the space out of it and you just look at the matter, it will not quite fill the head of a pin.
Right.
So it's just constant action. It's constant action. It's unceasing action that's underlying this appearance, this whole world show. Constant action. And so who's acting? The Lord is saying, I am. And you take my action for granted, but I don't stop. And by the way, why? And I'm giving you an example now. Why am I doing? Well, he gives two reasons, actually. You wanna give it a shot at one of them? One of you, Doug?
To set an example for everyone else.
To set an example for everyone else. That's the big one. That's the one he's really sharing. Beautiful.
Duty.
Yeah, if we can catch that. And so, and you could set your watch by the Lord's action, can't you? It's so reliable. So he's showing us also the way to act, and he's pointed the light on it. He's saying, look at this. So we come from there this morning.
Swami, you said there's two reasons?
Yeah, because it's to be done.
So that would be duty.
Duty. If there is to be a world illusion such as it is, then action is required. Because it's all action built upon action.
And suffering is optional.
Suffering is optional. That's the thing. God bless, yeah. That's the thing. But there's nothing here that's not in motion. The most stable objects, the rocks, are nothing but atoms seething. It is a seething pool of life in that rock.
So does this mean even when you're sleeping, you're in motion?
Well, what is in motion? What is in motion? The atoms, everything in that body is in constant motion. It doesn't stop.
Right.
Yeah, thank God, though, you quit asserting your own individual will over the body for a while. And it gets a break from you and it rests and heals. Because then nature's in charge instead of this little self.
It needs the break.
It's under the Lord's care for a while instead of you trying to do something.
Third state.
Oh. Okay. So he says, in this light, if I ever stop doing my continuous work, Arjuna, everyone would follow my example in every way. So that. And then, one more. If I stop doing, the worlds would perish. This is what we were just discussing. It's a scientific fact. The worlds would perish. They would collapse in on themselves. The Earth's what? 10 pins maybe. I don't know. If I stopped doing, the worlds would perish. I would confuse all species and cause the destruction of all creatures. Everything would collapse. So the fact that there is even the appearance of the world here is the first word that actually comes when the statement is being made is the sign of the Lord's love. The fact that even this opportunity exists in order to work this out.
Grace.
Is grace, the sign of the Lord's love.
Yes.
But the original thought was it's also the sign of action. Lord's action. Constant action. Consistency. And then he brings it home. He says, the unenlightened do things with attachment, wanting some results for themselves. An enlightened person does things with the same zeal, Arjuna. And this is very important for the yogi, the one who strives to be a yogi, considers himself to be a yogi, wants freedom is to have this, to hear this. This is a big one that's going to be counter the common notions. Does so with the same zeal, Arjuna, but without attachment, and thus guides others on the path of selfless action. I'll read it one more time. The unenlightened do things with attachment, wanting some results for themselves. An enlightened person does things with the same zeal, Arjuna, but without attachment, and thus guides others on the path of selfless action. So why with the same zeal?
I think it's with more zeal because there's more a state of calmness within, which is a multiplier in peace of mind and body.
Okay, very good.
So if you want to truly embody the love of the Lord, you have to serve as the Lord.
Oh, beautiful.
So the unenlightened individual finds passion in its motivation, the idea of what's coming to it, and however attached we are to whatever that is will motivate us, more and more. But it's finite, it's conditional, it's going to end, it's going to change, and that inevitably brings, exhaustion or tamas. We would say like a self-induced state of tamasic enjoyment, we would call it, but maybe it's something else.
Yes.
Whereas that unmotivated zeal is just the doingness itself. So the purified action is, or what Hara spoke to, that peace that surges through is the unadulterated prana that's just happening. So I think there was a Zen master that said there was no unenlightened people, but there was unenlightened action. There's no enlightened people, there's enlightened action.
Okay.
And that's the soul's rays kind of just shining through the body as a vessel.
Oh.
And there's that zeal.
Oh, very good. Very good. So the enlightened one, what does that mean? In a way, we can say it means that they've gotten out of the way of the flow. And there is zeal in, and so if there is a flow, is there a zeal in the flow? Is there a zest in this life?
Yes.
We can see it. If we can get out of the way a little bit and observe, we can see it. We can see it in the ants.
Yeah.
We can see it in the trees. We can see it in the leaves. We can see it in the sunsets. We can see it in the vistas. We can see that there is a zeal or a zest.
What does that word mean?
Yeah.
Zeal?
Zeal, enthusiasm. Enthusiasm.
So what does that mean?
Enthusiasm.
Why does a leaf have enthusiasm?
Life
We're just
force.
trying to figure out
Life
how it
force.
works.
Life force.
Yeah.
It's the-
Well, you have to watch it to see it.
Because it's alive.
In its
You
movement.
have to watch it to see it. But you see how it springs towards the sun,
Oh,
Yeah.
how it welcomes the sun, how it opens itself completely for the sun. It says, "Come, dear, I love you.
Huh.
true.
I give myself to you."
Yeah, this guy's been on the move. He's really embodying that.
Yeah, an enthusiasm, zest, a zeal like that. So that's a natural characteristic of the flow state. So the one that is enlightened will naturally, talking about the one who is enlightened, not the one who's seeking enlightenment. The one who is enlightened will naturally exhibit that same zeal as the one who's wanting something from it.
With no attachments.
Is that one of ours? It's a T-Mobile ring. Would you close the door then? And maybe you can see where that phone is and put it out of its misery. And then why would the one who's seeking liberation do like this? In order to copy the Lord. Because in embodying the Lord, doing the best to embody the Lord, then the Lord takes over. Or in surrendering to the Lord, then the Lord takes over. Yes? Or in devoting to the
I
Lord,
might even say
then the Lord
that's
takes over.
true, the true zeal,
Yeah.
rather than
So, but then again, we get to a personal motivation. Interesting. So there's a little discussion here from Swami Venkatesananda. It's very sweet. We're on Shloka 25. And the translation is just a little different. Same, but as the ignorant men act out of attachment to action, meaning attachment to the fruit of the action, O Arjuna, so should the wise act without attachment, wishing the welfare of the world. So there's a beautiful concept here being shared, wishing the welfare of the world. And then Swamiji says the verb is the most important word in this verse, and it is often overlooked. The verb, of course, is act. The tone is not optional, but obligatory. The wise man is left with no choice. In fact, the very validity of his wisdom would be questioned if he did not abide by the commandment contained in this verse. And Swamiji says, what is ignorance? Identification. So what is ignorance? And the answer is identification of the self, of oneself, the I, which is but the witness consciousness, with the body and world, which are constantly changing. We catch that? He's defining this avidya. It's just a beautifully prescient definition of ignorance. What is ignorance? It's taking the I, the pure self, which is witness consciousness, to be the body and or the world.
Yes.
What is wisdom? Also very simple. Realization that the self is but the witness of the world process and world activity. So wisdom is the, Swami Shivananda, last words come. Detach, attach.
Yeah.
So, right? Ignorance is being attached to the form as the self. So the guidance is to detach from that. Wisdom is attached to the spirit as the self, the observer, witness consciousness, and detachment from the forms. Meaning identity. Identity. So what is wisdom? Realization that the self is but the witness of the world process and world activity. The wise man will therefore not interfere with the course of nature, either by positively providing fuel for it by his own desires or cravings, or by negatively holding it back by refusing to let his body function as part of the world, which it is. So neither wrong action nor wrong inaction. The wise will engage in neither wrong action, and wrong action would be action taken for the sake of this imaginary self, this little self, right? And wrong inaction would be not allowing this imaginary self to participate in the world process as an actor within it. It's not the thing that's done that's the issue, you see. It's the spirit.
Yes.
And we sit around looking objectively at what people do, and we say, the world needs to be saved or something like this. And now, of course, it seems very much a political issue. And the views will be different according to this, but either position has a flaw in it. And the flaw is that there's something to be fixed, and I'm going to be the one to fix it.
You can only fix one.
Sorry?
You can only fix one, which fixes all.
Well,
by example.
It's a question of perspective is the thing.
Yes.
And by the way, in a perfect world, both of these forces would have to exist.
Oh. Nothing between.
What is perfection if not infinity? Right? So in a perfect world, all of these forces would have to exist. So which one to stop? Which one is wrong?
It's already perfect.
To observe.
I suppose it's like, what would imperfect mean or perfect mean?
What do all of these focus on? All of these saints and sages, what do they focus on?
Others.
God.
We call them teachers. What are they teaching?
Truth.
Immortality.
For everyone.
Who said truth?
Self-service.
Who said truth? Nature of self, nature of oneself, nature of oneself. Who we are.
Yes.
Yeah. The way to liberation. So, Have they taken one side in the fray? Any one of them?
There's only one.
Any of them?
No.
No.
They're taking all sides.
They take all of the
Whole
sides.
thing. Stay even harder.
That's right. The enemy is pretty close.
The world is maintained by God's energy, and the world includes the wise man's physical being too. He is part of the whole, and his egoistic withdrawal from life will confuse the minds of others on the field. In order, therefore, to ensure the welfare of the society in which she lives and to set an example for others to follow, the wise one must do her duty in this world, and what is more important, do it as if she were as interested in the affairs of the world as the ignorant. So that the ignorant man has no excuse to avoid following the wise, he adds. The difference is not in external appearance or behavior, but it is the wise one's inward spirit of non-attachment. Is it possible for one to deceive oneself and others that she lives in the spirit? He says, surely it is. Surely it is, because we're dealing with a field where the one who's not yet able to see that it's the motive of the action that leads towards freedom, the one who's not yet able to see it and still confusing the action itself as leading towards freedom or bondage, right? Then in that state, we will naturally judge the action.
Yes.
How else? How else? We'll naturally judge the action. So you can act, if you want to fool people, if you want to do it, it's easy to do. You just act in a way that's in accordance with their own desires, and they'll call you enlightened.
Yeah, how agreeable is this person?
In the world, yeah.
They'll call you great.
Because you agree.
Yeah. So, but then he raises the question, but why? What motivation is there to do it? Is it possible for one to deceive oneself and others that he lives in this spirit? Yes, he says. Surely it is. But deceiving others is a waste of time. Self-deception is a misnomer. Surely the wise man is free from pretension. Her wisdom is luminous enough to keep away the darkness of attachment born of ignorance. So, this inspiration of the saints and sages it's so pure because what's being shared here is embodied. They all act, They are pretty much nonstop. Right? We'll always hear stories from people meeting them about, but they acted in a certain way. They did this and it was wrong, or they did that, they said this, and I don't agree with it, and whatever, and that's all well and good. But if we really look at their action, we'll see not a self-centered motivation anywhere, right? But we'll see this constant action. So we can say that that's flow state. That who is it that's really acting? In the case of Dalai Lama, who is really acting?
Lord.
In the case of Saint Therese. Swami Chidananda, oh my God. He was non-stop, constant motion, constantly in satsang, constantly with people, constantly walking around.
That zeal was so bright.
Yes.
It's just, so good.
Yeah. Swami Ramaswarupananda, he had Swami Chidananda, he had the Swami Chidananda bug. So just always moving. And by the way, he had an excuse not to move because he'd had a paralyzing stroke and he could have just, and he didn't need anything. So always in these stories of the saints and sages, when we look at them, we say they didn't need something. Swami Chidananda, did he need glorification? Did he need for people to say, look, he's who's the saint with the relationship with the animals? You always see him. No? Saint Francis, thank you. Saint Francis. Swami Chidananda was called the Saint Francis of the East by many. He had that same relationship with the animals and the birds and such. But always offering food to them, always talking to them, always touching them in different ways. Not just the human people, but the animal people, the plant people, etc. as well. Just a constant flow of love. And what we're being led to here is that is the natural state. We have this idea of happiness or fulfillment or fullness or satisfaction coming from discontinuing action. This idea, this notion is very strong, isn't it? It's ingrained in society too. When I retire, when the kids are gone, when this is over, when I'm finished with this job,
when the weekend comes,
and then even when I'm enlightened. Here, when the weekend comes.
It's in that song we say, one fine morning when my work is over, gonna fly away.
Right, even there, it's there. Hara's favorite song. I can picture him singing it when you do that. Please lead that one of these days, Kartikeya. So it's so ingrained, right? It's so ingrained in this mental process that to not act is nirvana. But we see the opposite is true. Nirvana is inspired action, action freed of the self-centered nature. Action freed of the self-centered nature is actually rest.
So it's not actually like spontaneous, or you wouldn't be trying, or like trying to figure out how you're going to act, or like trying to work everything out.
It is spontaneous. Now sadhana, Nisargadatta describes sadhana so beautifully, Ramaswamy. He does. He says, because he's asked the question about someone imitating the saints, and he says, actually, if it's done without a self-centered motivation, that's called sadhana. Yeah, it's acting it out, is being inspired by the saints and then learning to live in that way. That is called sadhana. That is spiritual practice, isn't it? Yeah. It is. But not wanting something like, I don't do this so that people look at me a certain way or validate me or glorify me or...
St. Francis wasn't feeding the animals to gain their friendship.
Right.
It was that, well, what else
Beautiful.
to do?
Beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not saving the world because it's being destroyed or threatened, but they're doing
What to do,
what else to
yeah.
do.
What to do.
Whose world are they saving? The one who's asking, oh my gosh, you're saving the world. Not them.
Right.
Right? I mean, not from where they're acting. That's not what's happening.
And you had a comment.
Oh, I think it was about, to the point of, I'm finally enlightened, We have this, we kind of, I think, intuit that there is a self now that's really cloistered by these habits that are now baggage. Like, we're all walking around with costumes made of habits that we're told this is who we are. Now we should act and whatever. And we think that we have to let those go, where actually it's purifying, our perception. It's purifying, why we're doing what we're doing, because all these habits actually end up, this is how we can act in the world and function and actually, help. But it wouldn't be from that place of, because this is who I am. It's just, these are the tools that we have. And so I was just kind of relating to that, that feeling of exhaustion and realizing, action doesn't stop. It's my attachment, my relation to it.
And what we find is that feeling of exhaustion, where we feel it, and we even hear the words inside, I'm just exhausted, I'm so tired, right? That's actually the fruit of self-centered activity. Yeah. So it's the fruit of anything. It can be anything, but it's that self-centered motivation. That's what results. That's what brings that exhaustion. Now everyone sleeps. There's a natural flow of nature, but when we talk about nature, we're talking about the person, we're talking about the body, we're talking about the mind, which is not who you are. Right? So there's a concept of allowing, but we actually have to train or retrain in order to allow. So we have a responsibility of retraining the person in order to allow the person to be in the flow.
Yes.
Because we participated in a different kind of training.
It's a dog's way home. You gotta retrain. Your animal instincts.
What Ramasrup said really, I can relate to that, because I'll notice it with things that, habits that are just come to mind for me. Habits like pictures and different mantras and deities and such. So my mind likes that kind of stuff. But I notice if I'm printing a bunch of pictures and like doing it compulsively, and I don't set a motivation, I don't bow to the altar, there's no setting the stage for it. It's just doing it because I'm craving the images that I'm I feel just totally disturbed afterwards, even though these are all Buddha images or something. It's why am I disturbed and feeling frantic? Same thing with these
there you go.
YouTube videos and lectures and all these different things.
There you go. So you see, it's not the action itself that frees. This is a follow-on discussion to the Upanishad workshop yesterday. Right? It's always, whenever we've got two studies going on at the same time, they play off of each other. It's like a riffing, right?
Yeah.
So the discussion yesterday about grace. So here, it's not the action that frees, it's the motivation underlying the action. And for freedom, one has to act, but the motivation has to be addressed. This is what's being discussed. So, okay. Anything else? We'll stop for the morning.
I want to ask something. No, it's this question that Brett asked that we saved.
Okay.
And it was saying if someone comes and needs help and we help them, for example, and we keep giving, and this person keeps coming back all the time, and at some point it feels like they're taking advantage. Should we still keep giving at that point?
Okay. So it's a beautiful question, and it's a very inspired question, very practical. We can deal with a couple of aspects of it. One of them is that if I get to the point where I feel that they're just taking, then I found a disturbance within me.
It's about me.
So now, where is that disturbance coming from? Self-centered motivation.
Reward.
Right? And if you look at the ideas, they're taking something from me that's essential for me, like that. So it is self-centered motivation. We'll find it there. Not judging, so we'll see it. We'll see it. And we'll see that that's the source of the disturbance.
Oh yes.
But then is a question. Helping and serving are not the same. When we're helping someone, we tend to superimpose our own notions, ideas, and beliefs upon their state. And so that's also a self-centered motivation that we're wanting to get away from. If the motivation is selfless, then the question will be, what would actually be a benefit to them? Ultimately, the teachers will all recognize, those that we call teachers, ultimately the saints, the ones who embody the flow state, will demonstrate that it's self-knowledge that is really required. But of course, in the meantime, if there's, physical food, physical sustenance, etc., are beneficial, they're also needed. So they're always on offer. You go to an ashram, there's always free food. You come here, there's always free food. Somehow manna from heaven. Somehow it comes, and therefore it comes, so it's offered. So if someone's coming every day here and they're always wanting to eat, great, come every day. There's always food. You can always have food. But what do you really need? So
Spiritual food.
Right.
yeah.
So it's the
Same thing
motivation
everyone
context, of why you're helping someone. Really, if you're caught up in that, now they're taking, then you can see what's been offered. Hasn't been selfless service.
It was conditional.
It was.
It's conditional. It's conditional stuff. Again, completely non-judgmental. It's
Right.
conditional stuff. Now, if we were really going to help someone, though, then is helping someone the same thing as doing what they want for us to do?
No.
Right.
No.
We usually think that might be the case.
So if you really want to help someone, that's noble. That's wonderful, In some cases it is. They're by the side of the road and they have a flat tire and they want some help. And so, it's helpful. Help them change the tire. It's very helpful. It's noble, and you shouldn't drive by. An enlightened person wouldn't drive by. They would stop and help to change the tire. It would look the same. There wouldn't be any of this motivation. In fact, they do it with zeal.
Yes.
Right. Okay, let's go. Let's do this thing.
Get it done.
But someone who is in need of food, who keeps asking for food, maybe what they need is to know how to help themselves with food. So, and if you're contributing to an addiction in the support that you're providing, are you helping?
Not really. No.
So if you really look more deeply to see if it's helping or not helping,
Relieve suffering, not increase suffering.
the more we understand about the cause of suffering, the more we're likely to actually be of assistance with the causes of suffering. The more we understand that it's actually peace of mind that we wanted, the more we understand that it's peace of mind that all want. And the more we have the ability to look at actions and see if the actions contribute to peace of mind for myself and for all or not. So am I feeding an addiction, and is that contributing to peace of mind? Right? And if it's not, then you see, not because I'm disturbed by what you're doing, you see because of the habits that you're caught up in, for me to continue to do this is not beneficial for you.
Swami, I have a question to this point. That's challenged my personal experience. So I felt that through experience that my addiction and that our addiction largely is being addicted to, which is habituated to pacifying our egos.
Yes.
Really, and we're talking about this helping versus serving, and one that comes to mind that seems really subtle, but this peace of mind versus, I'm going to go help, with the temple, and we're going to serve, and then I'm going to go cook, rather than help with this task, and now we're going to talk about ourselves and how we got here and what we're doing and what we think about it, what we feel about it. And I found that it was challenging in the environment that I found that being quiet and actually continuing to serve and leaving conversation really just kind of out of the equation was actually contributing to a peace that was deeper than many of us could understand, just only by, well, this is how I feel good. I want to communicate, and I want to know you and be seen, and I want to see you. And really, it actually leads to all of these kind of like these self-asserting and self-serving, I guess, this kind of helping nature where eventually you get into bondage.
Right.
It's like that the flow state has to end, but the enlightened ones say, the flow state doesn't have to end.
Right.
And it doesn't look like what you think it does,
Right.
And I can cook a meal and serve my child and see in the process and help, and there's no lingering there.
No.
And I feel that for me that there's just something there that I've experienced with that. I had to find the courage to know that there is light when we believe that there's darkness, which we talk about a lot.
So here's these are various ways to reflect on the question, but here's the big one. The situation that Arjuna and Lord Krishna are in is that Lord Krishna is the Lord of the universe, and Arjuna has invited Lord Krishna to be the driver of the chariot. So the significance of that is, Lord Krishna, I will follow you. You tell me what to do, and I will do it. So really the needful is always to ask the Lord what to do in every single moment. And at some point, asking the Lord becomes a habit. That's what this whole dialogue is, and that's what it's leading us to, is that our own notions and ideas are terribly wrong.
Yeah.
They're ill-informed, they're conditioned, and they're leading us to suffering. Whatever they are, on any subject, we discover in this dialogue that they're terribly wrong. That we don't know. We keep seeing, well, I don't know. I didn't know. It's true, I didn't know. I didn't know this happened, right? And the Lord is teaching. Well, the Lord's teaching is essential. And what is the Lord teaching? The Lord is teaching, ask me and I shall answer. Ask me and I shall tell you. And by the way, I'll give you the tools so that you don't have to be apart again. So with a question like this, the start is, dear Lord, what to do? Now, once this body chariot is trained, then these are all trained. That's the only difference. They're all trained. So once it's trained, then there's a natural flow to it. But it's not an objective answer. With one person who asks for something, it'll be provided. With another person that asks for something, it won't be provided. And something else will be given instead. That's the same way the Lord is with each and every one of us, I ask for something, sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't get it. But there's intelligence and love underlying the response or lack of response. It's not a person responding to me. It's the Lord responding to me.
Because the Lord
in the situation.
understands what you really need.
Yeah.
What you want.
So we think we know, but when we think we know, we don't know.
We find out we don't.
When we think we know, we don't know. It's also Upanishadic stuff. The one who thinks they know does not have it right.
It's the pie in the face law of the universe, you know.
Right. The one who thinks they know does not have it right. So that's the real answer. Is learn to develop this dialogue, which is really becomes a process of surrender, to come into the light, to become one with the light. And then people will judge our actions. It's fine. But from the inside, there won't be any of this question or disturbance or issue. Right? We'll know what to do. We won't have to think about it. That's the best. It's the best. And that's what we're being guided to here. Is this constant recognition, I didn't know. Yes, it makes sense. And if you see the bells and whistles that go off, right, as we're in this dialogue, oh, wow, yeah, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. Of course, why didn't I think of that? And there's an answer to that too. And did I have to think of it? Or is it okay, dear Lord, for it to be your wisdom and your love? And let me just embody that instead of trying to create something myself, something separate, something unique myself. I'll just follow you instead.
It's like when the floor falls down.
Oh.
You don't have anything left to, how do I say, unique yourself.
Now, what are we going to make of this situation? I don't know, dear Lord, it's up to you.
That's what the attachment
But it's also clear that the Lord is always acting. We had a good discussion of that today. The Lord is always acting, and everything the Lord's action is here. I know it seems weird just looking at this floor from a different perspective. It's constant motion. It is. And who's acting? Krishna. Rama. Oh, okay, let's close. Short final prayer in RT, page 174. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Varvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Ritor Mukshiyaman Ritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Varvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Ritor Mukshiyaman Ritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Varvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Ritor Mukshiyaman Ritata Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, let us abide in thee forever and ever. On below Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki. Salutations to all the saints and sages of all traditions. Let's stand for Arati.